And so I'm going to play a long clip from Ryan Clark. And this was his introduction or his pledging to be a race clown. This is part of his ritual to raise his hand and say, hey, pay me millions of bucks. I can be a race clown. I can stir racial division. And so Ryan Clark, and I called this out in real time 4.5 years ago when he pulled this, when everybody was doing their George Floyd gimmick, their Jussie Smollett gimmick. Ryan Clark went on television. I can't think of the name of this black host who assisted him in telling this far-fetched comical tale about the racism that his son experienced. And Ryan Clark got to crying on TV. And so you've seen me reference him before, but we've never played the full 6-minute excerpt. And I want you to listen to this and just understand how, and particularly now, you can hear the buffoonery, you can hear the lies, you can hear the exaggerations. It's almost comical, this story that gets unpacked. But this is Ryan Clark signing up to be a race clown. Play the clip.
But turn now to an important story to tell, one that's very personal to our friend Ryan Clark. Ryan's son Jordan and 2 of his Arizona State football teammates say they were called a racial slur at a Whataburger near campus. Now, due to the pandemic, this is what happened. The drive-through was the only way to order. Jordan Clark says they asked a woman driving her car if they could give her money to buy food for them. She said no because she was in a hurry. Another customer agreed to buy it for them. But while they waited for their food, Clark says, quote, the woman that we asked initially eventually got to the window and proceeded to roll down the window to ask what our problem was. We were sitting on the wall. She then filed a complaint with the manager that we harassed her and he comped her meal. She then turned to us and said in a vindicated voice, she said, thanks for the free food, N-word. Now, Clark goes on to say the store manager gave her the food. She began to drive off while saying bye, N-word. The manager was unfazed. He was quick to condemn us and tell us we were wrong, quick to threaten us and say he'd call the police. Now, Whataburger has released a statement saying, quote, we do not tolerate racism and we're horrified to hear how these customers were treated by another customer. We are reinforcing training with our employees on how this incident was handled and apologize to the players and their families for this terrible experience. Ryan Clark is back with us. Ryan, to see this happen to your son, I don't even want to ask a question.
Okay, yeah. So, because he's about to turn the floor over to Ryan Clark. I just want you to evaluate the story that was just told. Now, maybe I'm a fast food drive-through expert, and maybe the rest of you don't have the level of expertise that I have at a fast food drive-through. But I got a lot of experience at a fast food drive-through. I've seen everything in a fast food drive-through. Been there so many times, I know it in my sleep. Listen to that story. And I know he's talking about this is during COVID, this is 2020, people can't go inside. And his sons and 2 friends just wanted someone to order them food so they could eat. And they asked this woman and she said no. And then later they engaged with her and she called them the N-word for no reason. Nothing provoked her. And I'm not even saying there's anything that could justify calling them the N-word. But I just want you to think it through. Is that how life really works? Someone asked you to do them a favor at a drive-through. Hey, could you put my order in? You say no. And then they politely, ma'am, could you please order us some food at a drive-through? No. Then she drives through to get her food and she's like, well, I told them no and they said nothing in return and I just shouted the N-word at them. Now, this is a white woman who, according to the story, seems to be in the car by herself. And there's 3 college football players, large men, athletic-looking men. And this woman in Arizona just wants to shout the N-word at them without being provoked. Nothing happened. They said nothing to her. They never called her a name, nothing. She's just looking for trouble with 3 large, athletic, young black men. Do you know a lot of women, black, white, brown, yellow, that just at a drive-through is like, hey, let me agitate 3 young men. Take color out of it. Do you think this story makes sense? And that the manager, they're insinuating, overheard all of this and sided with the racist white woman and didn't think like, hey, man, or hey, young lady, why are you shouting this? Just think the story. This story is bogus. At best, how that story played out is they talked saucy to that woman and she talked saucy back to him. That's just common sense. If this actually happened, it's because 2 sides were talking saucy. This group of innocent young, and because I've been a young college football player and an idiot, and I used to talk saucy to just random people. And when I say talk, could have been flirting, could have said, hey, I can get in them panties, could have been any of that. College kids, college football players. I used to be one and know them, and I know the silly stuff that we would do to irritate people if we thought they weren't being cooperative with what we wanted. But they're telling this fantasy story where Ryan Clark's son dropped down from heaven like an angel, and this white woman in a drive-through by herself. Hey, I want some smoke. I want some trouble with 3 young athletes. Really? Are we really? This story is farcical. And ESPN has no business platforming this farcical story and then turning it over to Ryan Clark to embellish on this farcical story. And boy, does he run with it. Let's return to the clip and Ryan Clark's interpretation of what happened.
With us, Ryan, to see this happen to your son, I don't even want to ask a question. You're a member of our family here. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, I think initially the first thing is, as a black man and the father of a black young man, I'm happy he's alive, period. Like that was my first thought. And then that immediately turned to anger. And what's crazy is I wasn't mad at the young lady or the woman. I wasn't mad at the manager. I was mad at myself. I was mad with Jordan. And I'm not necessarily sure that that's the right emotion to have, but nothing pisses me off more than being scared. And even though I knew the moment was over, I was still.
I just wanted. This man just went from a white woman at a drive-through in Arizona, and his son played at Arizona State. I've been to Tempe, Arizona. This is Tempe, Arizona. This ain't Buck Tussle, Mississippi, Arizona. This ain't backwoods Tempe, Arizona. This is Tempe, Arizona. And this man just said that he's happy his son is alive, that he survived this encounter at a drive-through window with some random white woman in her car. She could have had a gun and killed his son. This is what he's inferring. This is farcical, but this is the making of a race clown. Let's continue.
And I'm playing out other scenarios in my mind. I'm playing out a scenario of if this woman would have had a weapon and she could easily say that these 3 young black men were threatening her. One of Jordan's friends is a tight end. He's extremely tall. He's a thicker kid. And I believe that if that woman pulls a gun on those young men and if that woman pulls the trigger, I believe that she's never punished. I believe that justice is never served. And even if justice is served, it's not enough to bring my son back. But this isn't just a fear.
Pause. This is what I'm talking about when I say the whole culture's been feminized. What have you heard me talk about earlier this week in these shows about the delusion of women and the delusion of black women in particular? They live in some fantasy world. 300 pounds, wearing the smallest clothes on the planet and just, I'm thick. I'm not overweight, I'm thick. I can't even tell you what a woman is. You can be a Supreme Court justice, a black woman, and get in front of the entire world and say, I'm not a biologist, I can't tell you what a woman is. This is the delusion that we live in. This is the reflection of the matriarchal culture. And this is Ryan Clark, a man that played a combat predatory sport, football. He doesn't realize he's developed the mindset of a woman, and he lives off in fantasy world. That woman could have had a gun and she could have killed my son at that drive-thru. And he goes so far with it that he thinks the white woman could have pulled a gun on 3 black college kids, shot and killed them at the drive-thru, and she would have never been charged or convicted of a crime. He's off in hypothetical fantasy land on national TV after some host on ESPN. I don't even want to ask you a question, Ryan. The floor is yours. You're part of the family. Go ahead. Tell your fantasy story. No one's going to question it, Ryan. Your story is above reproach. Anything you say. The host, and I can't think of this dude's name, he should have fell out of his chair. Like, what did you just say? And see, this is the difference. This is why they can't stand me. Because I grew up at the Masterpiece Lounge. And if somebody had been sitting in the Masterpiece Lounge and told that story, somebody would have shouted out the N-word with a hard A and then ended with, please. That Negro, please. Cut the cap. Wouldn't have said cap in the Masterpiece days in the Golden Age. Maybe they say it now, but Negro, please, what are you doing? This is comical. Shut the. This is how it would have been handled. But I lived during a time, or the Masterpiece Lounge and all that, the America, the black America that I knew was steeped in common sense and in reality. But we've moved off to this matriarchal fantasy land. And the men have moved there too. This is the making of a race con. We're watching this play. This is a dance and a ritual. This is something Ryan Clark has to do in order to get that paycheck from people that want you focused on a conflict between black and white people, not a conflict between people that believe Jesus Christ is their Lord and Savior and people that reject that. Like what you saw? Hit that like button, subscribe, and check out the full episode by clicking the link below.